Episode 39, Alone All These Years. Bryce entered his office. Recalling how happy Mrs. Perkins had looked when she first met Liam, he felt a slight heartache. If he had a little boy of his own, truly his own, would he be as cute and adorable as Liam? Just then, Samuel hurried into Bryce's office and asked him bluntly, "Bryce, is it true that you've got married?" Bryce wasn't too happy that someone had already found out and said, "How the heck did you know?" Samuel said, "My aunt told me. I couldn't believe it at first. So it's really true?" The traditional stereotype is that women love to gossip, but men are much worse. If Samuel's aunt didn't work at the courthouse, Samuel wouldn't have gotten such an important tidbit of juicy information so quickly. Bryce's frown deepened. How could he have forgotten that Samuel's aunt worked at the courthouse? "Go and give your aunt a call and tell her to keep this to herself," said Bryce, concerned. Samuel nodded. "Don't worry, I've already informed her. But come on, tell me how this happened. You got married? This is really unbelievable. Wow! Who's the lucky lady?" For Samuel, the news that his dignified and prominent CEO had gotten married was pretty much the news story of the century. Samuel kept blabbering on, but Bryce ignored him and continued to focus on the documents he needed for this meeting. Samuel was trying to guess who it was that Bryce had married, but seeing how calm Bryce was, he couldn't help but think of one particular person. He decided to risk it and asked doubtfully, "Bryce, you didn't marry Natalie from last night, did you?" He stopped reading the documents, raised his head, and said, "So what if I did?" Samuel slapped his thigh. So it really was Natalie. He saw there was something between the two of them, but he couldn't pinpoint what. "Bryce, I can't believe you're actually married. I thought you'd be single for the rest of your life." Samuel couldn't help but sigh, but at the same time, he couldn't fathom the logic at work here. Bryce cast a cold glance at him and said, "You're overthinking it. It's true that for a while I had no intention of getting married, but that doesn't mean I want to stay single forever." Samuel was a good friend. If anyone else had asked these questions, he wouldn't even have considered explaining. However, Samuel obviously had doubts about Bryce's explanation, so he pressed further. "I still think it's a strange move. You were obviously deeply hurt back in the past. I mean, that's why you've been on your own." Before he could finish his question, Bryce gave him such a cold stare that Samuel immediately shut up. Bryce looked away and said airily, "Natalie is my wife now. She has nothing to do with anyone else, or with the past. As for me being deeply hurt, who in the world is in a position to hurt me deeply? That will never happen." But while thinking this, he recalled that enchanting night 5 years ago. That was the only time in his life when he had lost control and had slept with a woman he didn't know. Normally, he kept his feelings under tight rein. Samuel quickly nodded in agreement. "All right, I get it, Bryce. Look, just ignore what I said, okay?" That seemed to finish the discussion on the subject. But Samuel got serious again and asked another question. "Natalie has a child with another man. Will your family accept this marriage?" Bryce said scornfully, "Do I need anyone's permission when I do things around here?" Samuel gave a sigh and didn't press any further. He knew that there was always a reason behind everything Bryce did. Then Samuel considered for a moment before saying, "You just got married. Why not invite a few of your friends and colleagues out for a drink with Natalie to celebrate?" He only asked this because he wanted to see how Bryce treated his new wife. In all the time Samuel had known him, he had never seen a caring, gentle side of Bryce. It would definitely be an eye-opener. He shook his head in refusal. "She hasn't got time to socialize. Let's talk about it some other time." Samuel thought, so now Bryce is married. He's arranging his wife's daily schedule. Will she have much of a say about her future? It was true that Natalie was busy, but not in the way Samuel thought. After they'd returned home from the courthouse, Mrs. Perkins had given mother and son a tour of Bryce's estate. By the time the estate tour was finished, it was already afternoon. Even though they were married now, Natalie didn't want to rely on Bryce for everything. She still wanted to be independent and work hard. Most importantly, she needed to try and get the Davidson family out of her hair as soon as possible. She decided to go to the office, to her new job. When she arrived, though, she found that the atmosphere in the office was strange. Everyone was anxious. Not many people were in the office, but even those who always had work to do were no longer engaged in their tasks. Everyone seemed to be standing idle. She got the receptionist's attention and said, "What's going on? Why is the atmosphere like this?" When the receptionist saw Natalie, a new face, she was surprised. She hadn't expected the company to be recruiting someone new at this time of year. She replied honestly to her, "The company's performance has not been so great lately, so there's a restructuring going on. Lots of people here are losing their jobs, so the atmosphere is naturally not too good." Natalie was more confused. Was this the kind of luck she needed? Did this mean that she would lose her job before she even started? Wanting to know where she stood, Natalie went to the HR department to look for the HR manager who had interviewed her. When the HR manager saw Natalie, he was slightly taken aback. Not wanting to beat around the bush, Natalie said, "What's going to happen to the company? You didn't mention anything about this restructuring when you offered me the job." The HR manager sighed helplessly and explained, "Natalie, unfortunately, this is not my decision to make. I can only do what the higher-ups tell me. The company will be restructuring in the next 2 days. I'll be able to inform you then whether or not you'll be staying." Natalie realized there was nothing she could do but wait. She left the office feeling extremely frustrated.